building an aircraft, you need to know enough to build your own aircraft. You need to know enough to kind of construct your own aircraft. And a lot of pilots have built their own aircrafts at home after becoming a pilot. Chapter, aircraft general knowledge.
If you build your own aircraft, you should fly it from only the airport or anywhere else?
Depends on the approvals, right? If you've got a category utility aircraft certification, you can fly them from any aircraft. So you've built the aircraft in a way that they approve, they test. There's flight tests, obviously. There's airworthiness, or like hundreds and hundreds of slides like these for different chapters, right? And I expect you to go home and read every single line, even though I may not be going through every single slide because it's not required for me as an instructor to go through certain topics in the class. But you as a student are required to go through everything, right? Okay, so let's look at this. The aircraft in question here is a Diamond DA-40, for example, a single engine aircraft. Now, let's dissect them in different parts. The front part of the plane, in this case, because the engine happens to be in the nose, this and this, correct? This region is the power plant, this region is the power plant. In some planes, the engine is below the wings. That area where the engine is mounted is called as the power plant. In this case, it's this area, propeller and this engine area. The wings from here to here and here to here, that's the wing area, right? The tail section from here to here, everything inside this tail section is called as the empennage. Fancy French words, right? We don't call them the tail section, we call them the empennage. E-M-P-E-N-N-A-G, like the champagne with a weird spelling, right? So we spoke about fuselage, empennage, wings, and power plant. Now we'll specifically talk about how to build a fuselage. If you start building an aircraft today, would you start building it from the engines first? No, you'd first create the entire frame. The main part of the aircraft would be the fuselage. You're not going to start building the tail first and then the wings and then build the fuselage, right? So fuselage would be the first thing you build. And I want you all to know the different ways how you can construct a fuselage. The oldest method of constructing a fuselage was the truss method. T-R-U-S-S, truss, one of the oldest methods. They just took a bunch of wooden pieces, lots of wooden sticks, put them all together in a frame, couple of aluminum cables to strengthen them, and that was the shell. Basically carpenters. A bunch of carpenters sat down, just like how you make wooden furniture, the oldest method of making fuselages. They didn't have high-end technology to fabricate metallic sheets into the full type of aircrafts we have today, obviously, with the mix of metals and so on. That was the oldest method. And now, obviously, they were not the best. Later on, more advanced methods of creating the fuselage came up. Obviously, truss method should have been very not fire resistant. It must have been very prone to catching fires or bars or reinforcements. If you want to see the example, this was a monocoque device, a monocoque aircraft. The entire frame was like an eggshell. You know how the eggshell? It doesn't have any pillars or any bars inside the eggshell. It's just the shell. Where's all the weight? In the outer body. Make sense? So a plastic bottle is a good example, or an egg. So this aircraft, for example, was at least better than truss. It was not made of wooden sticks and stuff and all that, but it did not have any metallic frame inside. It just had an outer shell. So that's basically like taking an entire metal sheet, making a round tube, that's it. No reinforcement, pillars and bars. Basically a fuel tank, and these are all metallic, tiny thin sticks made of aerofoil shape, so that it gives you that perfect wing design. And the wing is supposed to be very strong, because when your plane is up in the air, the weight of the plane is not on the tires, right? The weight of the plane is on the wings. So your wings need to be very strong. Imagine when your wings turn left, right, ups, downs, it puts a lot of load on the wings. So these need to be created in a very strong way. You need to know the names of each and every part, and they support the aircraft. The tip of the wing is called as the root. Yeah, I mean, this side is called as the root of the wing, and this side is called as the tip of the wing. You just need to know all the names. This chapter is all about knowing what the names of the parts of the plane are, and you also have to know which instrument is connected to which other instrument. If one of the instrument fails, what happens to the other instrument? You got to know them all. Now let's talk about the designs of the wing. There are a bunch of different designs of the wing. Some of the wing designs are, let's say, the cantilever. You need to know them. There is another type of device, the semi-cantilever, and then the third one is the externally braced. You have to know each and every one of them. Now, the cantilever wing design is very simple. It does not have any extra supporting structures. Clean. If you can imagine any of your airlines or most of the smaller planes, for example, this one. The wings are just independently connected to the fuselage without any extra cables or rods. Agreed? Now look at the next one. This is the semi-cantilever. There is extra supporting structures from your fuselage to the wings. Right over? This design is called as the semi-cantilever. And finally, externally braced. You'll see two different wings. Needs a lot of supporting structures. So you'll see rods and cables and aluminum wires all connected. And this type of design with multiple wings connected with multiple rods and cables are called as externally braced. So cantilever, part of the plane, the edge, the 30-40% of this section moves up and down. That makes the plane up and down. I'm not even talking about that right now. I'm just talking about this entire surface. Right? Just by being straight, it is giving that stability. Just by being here, even though this surface, only this surface moves. Right? This surface does not move. This surface moves. But the entire surface, when it's not moving, just by staying there, it is helping it cut through the air and stay straight. If I didn't have the rudder or the elevator or the entire empennage, if I could chop this area off, right? If I chop that entire area off, I could have the best engines and the best wings, and I could still have everything else in the plane. But if the plane misses this part, it's not gonna be able to stay in the air. Make sense? There's no control, no stability. That's what this part is about. Let me show you this little, you see that little thing? It's available in many of your other automobiles as well. This aluminum cylinder, they go in and out of each other. It has oil or air inside it so that it can go in and out. Those are basically air suspensions, right? This can actually make your landings feel a lot more softer. So let's go back. That is called as a shock absorber. And the name of the shock absorber we use in our planes are called as the oleo strut. So that little aluminum setup is called as the oleo strut, which reduces the impact. Now, what is a shock absorber? Shock absorber is anything which reduces that impact when you're landing. Your nose wheel assembly, your nose wheel in the front and two main wheels. Your nose wheel generally does not have the capability of taking in a lot of impact, which is why you touch the nose wheel the last. You come and touch down on your main wheels first, the two central main wheels which can carry all the loads, and then eventually you're going to touch the nose wheel, because the nose wheel is not going to be able to take in a lot of loads. Some of the shock is absorbed by the tires, but 90% now, even though tires are made of rubber, they are not responsible for taking in all that shock created by the impact. Yes, the rubber is nice and soft, there is air inside the rubber tires, that's great, but that only takes very less amounts of shock. It's the shock absorber, that entire setup we spoke about. The oleo strut is what takes the entire impact. Right now, the oleo strut uses compressed nitrogen and oil. So inside it, inside that little chamber, you have either oil or nitrogen. Now, why do we use nitrogen instead of air? Air is 78% nitrogen. Do you guys remember? If I take the air sample, 78% is nitrogen, 21% is oxygen, and 1% remaining is all the other inert gases, dust and humidity and everything else. So already if I use regular air, it will have 78% nitrogen, but all that other 21% oxygen and humidity and moisture and dust and all that will create a problem, because if you have moisture in the air, it can freeze. A metallic spring, which is good but has a few problems, it's not very soft. So air acting as a spring does much better. The oil acts to dampen the spring action. So the oil, because there's oil filled inside, the hydraulic liquid is also filled inside them, they can actually add as a cushion. Some of them are liquid, some of them are gases, and so on. So the rate at which it compresses, if you have put a lot of air pressure inside it, Even when the plane impacts the runway, it's not going to move quickly. That means you're not going to feel the shock absorption. You have to allow it to move in and out at a certain pressure so that you can disrupt the whole damage. Does that make sense? If it was too hard, then it was as good as putting a full one piece of metal there. There was no point. If the pressure is too high, it's also very bad. If the pressure is too low, it is also going to be bad. It has to have the right amount of pressure so that there's a right amount of movement in and out to make sure that the landings feel soft. Make sense? Let's keep moving. Now, remember that DTD 585 is the name of the plane is no longer on the tires and it's slowly reducing. So the first thing you'll notice even before the tires leave the ground is you'll see that the oleo strut starts relaxing. And then there will be a point where the tires are just touching the ground and circling, but the plane is technically already in the air. The weight of the plane is already in the air, but the tires are just freely touching. There's no weight on the tires, they're just freely touching. And then the oleo strut expands, and then the plane leaves the ground. This is a very clear phenomenon you can see when you're standing and watching planes take off. Before the tires leave the ground, they open up their oleo struts. Does that make sense? Right, so the gas pressure. Now, if the pressure of the gas is equal to the amount of weight pushing it downwards, so that means the weight of the plane is exerting a certain force. The gas inside the cylinder needs to be equal to or above to hold that. If it is equal to, then it will be there, right there. If it is more, if the pressure of the gas is way more than the force pushing it downwards, what's going to happen? It won't compress. It won't compress. It will stay where it is. If the pressure of the gas inside the cylinder is much lower than the force exerted by the entire aircraft, so obviously the oleo strut will squeeze in. Now, when you walk towards your aircraft and you start noticing that the oleo strut is way too low, it could only mean two things. Either the air pressure or the oil pressure is very weak, there's a leak, or the plane is loaded with ridiculously high amounts of weight. In any case, you shouldn't take off. So in one of the checklists, it will also tell you to make sure the tires don't look too depressed, which would also be the case in your cars. If you go down to your car parking and right before you jump into your car and you notice like, wait, the tires are sitting too low, you know, people kick the tire and see as well. You can feel when you kick it, it should be nice and hard. If you kick and it's a bit softer, they say maybe the tire is less. Okay, I mean, not everybody would realize that, but some people have taught me how to do it. So we would just press the tire and you would feel that repulsion from the tire, right? For a couple of PSI, you'll feel that. But if it's visibly low, it must be really low. Maximum speed of 156. Make sense?
What is AIS?
What is?
K is north, yeah, AIS.
Indicated airspeed. IAS is indicated airspeed. Whatever your instrument, whatever your airspeed indicator is showing you is called as indicated airspeed. Everybody okay with that? Right, so now tires, they're closed and they're inside. Now I'm flying at a certain speed and imagine if I open the landing gear. Now the left and the right landing gears go out this way, right? They open up one and they open up this way. But the nose wheel, right, is this way. The nose wheel opens this way. Does that make sense? Now what happens, and the wind is pushing it as well. There is a chance that the wind is so heavy, the headwinds are so harsh that it might not let the landing gear completely come and click into the lock position. So you don't want the landing gears to just open and hang on 1 inch before the lock position. Because if you come and touch the ground, it can suddenly collapse on its weight because it was not fully in locked position. When the landing gears touch the runway, they need to hold the weight, correct? You need to be able to come to the lock position. So those lights are going to keep blinking when they are in transition. But as soon as they touch the lock position, there are J-locks which hold the landing gear in position. Only then the lights turn green to tell you that they are now in the lock position. That means firefighters are all standing. Like, what the hell? Normal landing, You know, people are standing with the camera saying, "Oh, I'm gonna get a beautiful YouTube video." Some of them are happily disappointed, right? You know. Anyway, so the point is, now these days the planes very easily have the option for you to pull this LED light out. Very easily comes out, and you can swap around. The chances of all filled with nitrogen gas, because oxygen and dust and moisture is going to cause a lot of problems. Nitrogen. There are lots of centers these days in Dubai who charge you 25 dirhams per tire, 100 for 4 tires, to give you nitrogen. What a scam I find them